A Jewish man pretended to be Persian to save his life, and coincidentally, there was a captain in the concentration camp who wanted to learn Persian. So, he was brought before the captain. To verify his identity, the captain asked him to say a few words in his native language. Not knowing any Persian, he had to make it up. Since the captain also knew nothing about Persian, he just babbled a lot of nonsense. Afterwards, he didn't forget to give it a poetic translation. His fluent Persian temporarily dispelled the captain's doubts. Thus, he was assigned an easy job in the kitchen. He worked there during the day, and after work, he would come to teach the captain Persian. However, the captain made it clear up front. He hated being deceived more than anything, and if he found out, he would make the person wish they were dead. Although he was a bit terrified, he managed to survive. He thought he could just bluff his way through, but the captain demanded he teach at least 4 Persian words every day. Fortunately, the captain didn't know Persian either, so Giles decided to invent a language to fool him. However, this wasn't easy because before teaching the captain, he had to memorize the made-up words himself. He had to create and remember them. While working in the kitchen, he had to be resourceful, using whatever was around him like salt, oil, vinegar, tea, pots, pans, pumpkins, chickens, ducks, cows, sheep, pigs, bacon, butter, bread, and cutlery. In his mouth, they all got brand new Persian names. Soon, he faced his first Persian lesson in life. At this point, the captain openly shared his reason for wanting to learn Persian. He planned to open a restaurant in Tehran, the capital of Persia, after the war ended. It turned out he had started helping in the kitchen at 12 and became head chef at 12. Definitely run a good restaurant. If he learned 4 Persian words a day, he could learn over 1,000 in a year, and over 2,000 in 2 years. It was estimated that World War II would last at most 2 more years. No matter who won or lost, this vocabulary would be enough to open a restaurant. The first word they learned was next. One was eager to teach, and the other was eager to learn. The captain learned with enthusiasm, while Giles was mentally exhausted from making things up. He never imagined that being a teacher could be such a brain-draining job. To keep up the charade, he constantly practiced even while sleeping. Unexpectedly, he was caught red-handed by the dorm supervisor, but he managed to get away with it by claiming he was praying in Persian. Next, he was worried every day about coming up with 4 new words. He thought that was enough to give him a headache, but then a bigger problem arose. He hadn't realized that he had severely underestimated his own linguistic talent. Learning 4 words a day was too easy. So, he listed 40 German words at once and had Giles translate them all into Persian, planning to check them in a few hours. Hearing this, Giles was completely stunned. Coming up with 40 words was easy, but remembering them was nearly impossible. This time, Giles felt he was doomed. Now, the only option was to make a run for it. Unexpectedly, someone actually gave him the opportunity. It turned out that ever since he became the captain's teacher, the captain noticed his handwriting was quite good. On the other hand, the handwriting of the female assistant responsible for record-keeping was atrocious. So, the captain had Giles take over the assistant's record-keeping duties. This left the female assistant feeling utterly dejected. However, facing the captain, she dared not express her anger and could only vent her frustration on the Jewish prisoners in the back. She thought one prisoner's hands weren't clean enough and directly pressed them onto a scorching iron plate. When her admirer, Little Bad, found out about this, he immediately went to the captain to plead for her. She claimed to have grown up among Jews and could tell at a glance whether someone was Jewish. She insisted that Giles was definitely a fake Persian. Her words made the captain furious. "Do you think you're smarter than me? Can I tell what kind of person he is? Do I need you to teach me how to live? A few days ago, you traded him with me for canned food, and now that you've eaten it, you're saying he's fake. Are you treating me like a 3-year-old monkey?" The captain's reprimand left Little Bad feeling utterly frustrated. He needed to find a way to erase Giles from the camp, to kill him directly. The captain certainly wouldn't let them off. After some discussion, the two of them hit upon a perfect plan. Little Bad then volunteered to escort Giles to fetch water outside the camp, pretending to enjoy the scenery while letting Giles escape. Since no one had ever escaped the camp alive, he was sure to die on the way. Giles felt this was a heaven-sent opportunity. So, he took off running into the woods. The pervasive darkness seemed like a glimmer of hope. But suddenly, a veteran in the sunlight called out to him. From this French veteran, we learned that heading east from here leads to a minefield, and going west leads to a swamp. You can only rely on your 2 legs to escape. If the Germans want to chase you, they'll abandon their cars. It's best for you to return the way you came. After all, a bad life is better than a good death. Eventually, Giles took the veteran's advice and pushed the cart back to the camp. Seeing Little White unexpectedly return alive, Little Bad and the female assistant were both utterly shocked. After she returned, Shang Wei immediately took her to the desk. Her job was to transcribe the list of Jewish prisoners. Shang Wei was very strict about the format. However, Giles didn't have time to think about these things. At this moment, her mind was filled with Persian words. Until the sun set and night fell, Giles couldn't come up with a single word. Just when she was at a loss, flipping through the pages of the roster gave her inspiration. A bold idea took root in her mind. So, she used parts of the Jewish names as roots for words. Before Shang Wei's inspection, she managed to come up with 40 words. Seeing the list Giles transcribed, he was full of admiration. This time, it was like a walking human typewriter. All 40 words were submitted. However, Shang Wei didn't stop there. He wanted to verify them face to face. Fortunately, the transcribed roster was right in front of her, and Giles managed to bluff her way through by glancing at it. To remember the words more firmly, he would call out their names one by one during mealtimes to deepen his impression. Using these names and his first impressions of the people, he created even more new words. Reciting every day, Giles's fictional language filled the captain's heart with the joy of learning. In the blink of an eye, 6 months passed, and the captain had learned over 600 Persian words. But the news spread, and almost the entire camp knew the captain was learning Persian. This naturally caught the commander's attention. He called the captain into the office and questioned him face to face if he was planning to defect. This shocked Shang Wei, who quickly denied it. He explained that his brother was in Tehran, and he was just preparing in advance to reunite with him after the war. Is a love for learning a crime? This made the commander furious, thinking the war wasn't over yet, and here you are slacking off. If everyone had your determination to learn Persian, Germany could move its capital to Moscow. But fortunately, there's a more neutral opportunity now. In a few days, he's organizing a team-building event. There's a task to prepare food and drinks, and it's assigned to the captain. Knowing he's in the wrong, the captain reluctantly agrees. On the day of the gathering, the scene is bustling with excitement. Everyone is singing and dancing, indulging in joy and sorrow. At this moment, the inquisitive captain casually asks how to say number in Persian. Realizing something is off, Giles quickly explains that the word is ambiguous. But feeling deceived, the captain still hits him hard. The louder the officer holding a sigh laughs, the harder the captain hits him. Fortunately, the captain doesn't choose to kill Giles but sends him to a harsher place, the dung field. And he's strictly guarded by Little Bad, slowly tortured. After all, giving him a quick shot would be too easy. Letting him be tortured to death is more satisfying. Sure enough, within a few days, the frail Giles collapses from exhaustion. In his dying moments, he still mutters his self-created Persian. If Little Bad were guarding him, he wouldn't have any chance. Luckily, on this day, Little Bad went on a date with his female assistant. He found her comrade, who was still suspiciously thinking about the remaining 8 cans of meat. It turns out they were willing to bring Giles to the captain because the captain had declared in the camp that anyone who could find someone who spoke Persian would be rewarded with 10 cans of meat. However, when they brought Giles over, the captain feared Giles was a fraud. So, he only gave them 2 cans at the time. The rest would be given after confirmation. Seeing Giles muttering incomprehensible words, the comrade called the captain over. Perhaps only the captain, who had studied Persian, could understand him. Unexpectedly, the captain really understood. Giles was saying he wanted to go home to find his mother. The captain thought that people without consciousness would speak their mother tongue. Could he have wronged Giles? The captain quickly ordered Giles to be sent to the medical station. The comrade who saved Giles also received the remaining 8 cans of meat and was even given a bottle of fine wine. Driven by a strong will to survive, Giles managed to pull through. Under the careful care of the doctor and the captain, Giles quickly recovered his health. But the mental trauma was hard to erase, as if everything could never return to the way it was. To express his apology, the captain gave Giles his old cotton coat. Hoping he wouldn't be ungrateful. This time, he truly regarded Giles as his teacher. At this moment, Giles. He also started to become assertive, teaching the captain in a teacher's tone that the words for number and bread are the same in Persian. He would even take the initiative to talk to the captain, and when the captain didn't understand, he would subtly remind him like a teacher. This gradually brought them closer without them realizing it. They communicated in a language unique to them, like encrypted market conversations. The captain finally revealed his true feelings. He lost his mother at the age of 3, and his father was disabled and unable to move. The family survived by selling hot water. They didn't always have cabbage and potatoes, so he longed to grow up and never go hungry again. This is why he later became a chef. His heart, like a flower petal, gradually stopped blooming. These hidden memories had been buried for a long time, and now they were finally expressed through Persian. If it weren't for their opposing identities, they might have become good friends. Then, the captain said he would send him to a farm to hide for a few days. Giles immediately understood that a large number of Jewish compatriots were about to be executed. The next day, the prisoners began to be gathered. Giles was openly taken out of the camp and sent to the farm to hide. The captain's blatant favoritism was hard not to arouse suspicion. So, the female assistant took the opportunity to report to the commander that the captain was hiding a male lover and favoring prisoners. The commander then specifically came to question the captain. After listening, he calmly and casually took out the website. She said there have always been rumors in the military, like the ones about you, Commander. It turns out the demoted female assistant had previously sparred with the commander behind the scenes for a promotion. But after getting together with Shalwai, he became a bit complacent and even discussed the size of the commander's brother in public with Shalwai. Unexpectedly, Shalwai's ex-girlfriend overheard them. To get revenge, she secretly reported it to the captain. The captain only mentioned the part about the size. They all said your brother needs a magnifying glass to be found. But I think that's definitely malicious slander. Hearing this, the commander could only agree along with it. We were all framed by Liu Yan Feiyu. Who is Liu Yan? The commander knew very well who spread the rumors. His revenge was delayed but inevitable. A few days later, he used his authority to transfer the female assistant to the front line as cannon fodder. And Shalwai's ex-girlfriend would take over his previous job. That day, the captain said the prisoners in the concentration camp were to be transferred to Branjals. It was clear that the truth was not so. Awaiting them was either the gas chamber or a mass grave. Fortunately, the captain intervened again, arranging for Giles to hide at the farm for a few days until he could figure out a way to bring him back. The next day, Giles left the concentration camp amidst the German officer's roll call and gunfire. He rolled in the dirt at the farm, slept on haystacks, and ate raw potatoes. But at least he survived. When Giles returned to the camp, Shalwai blocked his way, seeking revenge for his female assistant. He said she was a fake Persian cat with 9 lives and wanted to see how many bullets it would take to kill her. However, Giles's expression didn't change at all, and he calmly walked past. Shalwai ultimately didn't dare to shoot, as he still cherished his own life and didn't want to offend the captain. At this moment, the open field was filled with a numb atmosphere, much like the terrifying calm in Giles's heart. Even the barracks were empty and desolate. Once, every person here contributed to his life with every word they painted. Now, they were all on their way to Poland, turning into the black smoke rising from the crematorium chimneys, ascending to a heaven they could never reach. Later, he picked up a cloth doll from the ground, tore off the name on it, and defined that name as life. A few days later, the camp welcomed a new batch of Jewish prisoners. Life always cycled endlessly here. Giles returned to the kitchen to work as a helper, serving food, asking for names, and inventing Persian words. Every day, he repeated these mechanical tasks. It seemed like these days would never end. As the war drew to a close, Shangwei became increasingly obsessed with Persian, often marveling at how beautiful a language it was. However, what he didn't know was that when parents named their children, they chose words that sounded pleasant. That's why the words he learned felt so beautiful. That day, he even sought out Giles and composed a poem using the words he had learned. The wind blows the clouds eastward, towards the land of peace the soul longs for. I know that there, I will be happy. After receiving Giles's praise, Shangwei brought him a plate of sumptuous food to express his gratitude. But Giles wanted to take the food back to the dormitory to eat later. It wasn't immediately obvious, but Giles wanted to share the food with other starving people. So, he took some canned meat and bread for him to take back. Only then did Giles eat with peace of mind. When he returned to the barracks that night, Giles shared the food with the 2 brothers in the opposite bed. It turned out that the younger brother was mute and not good at physical labor. He accidentally fell during the day and was brutally beaten by the German soldiers. The older brother tried to protect his younger brother but ended up getting beaten as well. Giles witnessed this scene. At that moment, he decided not to survive alone but to slowly help those whose lives were fading away. The only thing he could offer was these canned meats and bread. His silent help deeply moved the older brother. But, as fate would have it, a new batch of prisoners arrived at the camp that day. When Shalwai discovered that there was a real undead among the new prisoners, he was overjoyed. He immediately rushed into the kitchen and grabbed Giles. He was full of confidence, thinking that if he could confront them face to face, Giles, the deceiver, would be exposed. However, when he brought Giles to find the Persian again, he discovered that the lively man had been killed. Shalwai was furious and was about to strangle Giles, repeatedly questioning who did it. Unexpectedly, the older brother of the 2 stood up. He took out the bloody weapon and admitted that he killed the Persian. He knew the Persian would threaten Giles, and only if Giles lived could his younger brother survive. This enraged Shalwai, who beat the older brother to a pulp. Thus, the older brother exchanged his life to save Giles and his younger brother. But he himself left this world forever. Meanwhile, the German army received orders from their superiors to transfer the prisoners according to the original plan the next day. Since the railway was bombed by the Allied Air Force, all prisoners and escorts had to walk to the next train station. That same night, a drunken Shangwei found Giles. He heard about the Persian's murder and comforted Giles, telling him not to be sad for his companion and expressing his own sorrow. The 3 of them could have communicated happily like brothers, practicing Persian together, but this accident interrupted it. Perhaps it was the sadness that reminded Shangwei of his former brother. For some reason, they had fallen out years ago. After the brothers went to Tehran, they lost contact. Upon hearing this, Giles didn't respond. He said he was a bit tired and also a bit scared. Shangwei, however, had 20 cans of meat and bet him that as long as he worked for him, he would be safe. Then he reminded Giles to hide on the farm for a few more days tomorrow. After spending this time together day and night, Giles gradually discovered that the German officer in front of him didn't seem so indifferent. He was born into a poor family and was simply attracted by the demeanor of the roadside officers, joining the army without much thought. His greatest wish in life was just to open a restaurant. If he hadn't been born in this wrong era and hadn't stood on opposing sides, perhaps they could have become good friends. But there are no ifs in the world. Tonight should be the last time he and Shangwei meet. In the dead of night, when everyone was asleep, Giles put on his Jewish brother's coat. He gave the chance to live to that brother, while he himself would walk the path he should have taken long ago with his companions early the next morning. Under the cold moonlight, Giles' small figure was made even smaller by the oversized coat, but his shadow appeared deeper and more majestic. He stood by the window, welcoming the dawn. The next day, Giles mingled with the crowd and set off for the station. An officer saw Giles in the crowd and thought Shang Wei had finally reformed and stopped hanging out with Muslims. Later, during breakfast, he teased Shang Wei a bit. Unexpectedly, Shang Wei was shocked, immediately responded, and left the table. He then hurriedly caught up with the group. Soon, he found Giles in the crowd. Like catching a chick, he grabbed Giles and pulled him out. But the soldier guarding the father and son quickly stopped the captain, claiming that taking someone away required the commander's order. Hearing this, the captain raised his gun and aimed it at the soldier's forehead. Let's see if my bullet is faster or the commander's order is faster. For the sake of his own life, the soldier dared not say another word. Throughout the process, Giles maintained a calm expression. Upon hearing that he was helping a mute to die, the captain found it unbelievable. How could you die for these nobodies? However, Giles retorted that each of them had a name. It's just that you never cared about them. They are no worse than you, at least they are not murderers. Even though you haven't killed anyone with your own hands. But if you're in charge of the kitchen, making sure the officers eat and drink well, then you're aiding and abetting. Shang Wei was left speechless by this. As a soldier, he could only follow orders, doing what he could manage, and the rest was beyond his control. In this world where he had no say over life or death, Giles soon found true relief. Due to the German army's continuous defeats, the American forces, with their powerful air force, were already at the gates of Berlin, France. Headquarters ordered them to evacuate immediately. However, before leaving, they had to destroy all written documents and kill all prisoners, leaving no evidence behind. Only then could they eliminate any future repercussions. At this time, Shang Wei knew the German Empire's days were numbered, and he wouldn't fight to the end. So, he quickly changed into civilian clothes, packed his belongings, and prepared to flee. Before leaving, he didn't forget to take Giles with him. Unfortunately, this scene was witnessed by Xiao Wei, who immediately reported their actions to the commander. But now, with everyone in a state of panic, the commander had no time to deal with others. Seeing Xiao Wei still standing there, unwilling to leave, the commander reprimanded him for abandoning his post and sent him away. Soon, Shang Wei and Giles bypassed the minefield, preparing to part ways in the forest. Shang Wei claimed there was a small airfield 10 kilometers from here. He planned to fly from there to Istanbul and then transfer to Tehran. As for why he took Giles, perhaps it was to repay Giles for his careful guidance over the past 2 years, or maybe out of pity, or possibly because of the friendship that had developed between them over time. However, Shang Wei's explanation to Giles was that he didn't want to lose a bet for 20 cans, but this friendship was about to come to an end. Afterward, the two parted ways in the forest, perhaps never to meet again in this lifetime. Soon, Shang Wei successfully reached Istanbul airport. Now, all countries were strictly checking for fleeing German soldiers. So, on the fake passport Shang Wei forged, his place of origin was listed as Belgium. He pretended not to understand German and spoke fluent Persian. He believed that with his 2 years of practice, getting through customs would be a piece of cake. Unexpectedly, no one there could understand him. Of course, he couldn't understand others either, because what he remembered were not real Persian words, but the names of the 2,840 Jewish people who had died. Coincidence led to the customs officer's suspicion, and the oblivious captain was anxiously shouting. The staff found him very suspicious, notified security, and had him apprehended. The captain, realizing something was wrong, frantically tried to escape but was quickly subdued. Meanwhile, Giles was called to the registration desk at the station. Since the Germans had burned all the POW records, they asked Giles about the approximate number of people held in the camp and if he could remember the names of any of them. Unexpectedly, Giles not only knew that about 30,000 people had been held in the camp, but he could also accurately recite the names of 2,840 of them. The staff was shocked, thinking it was impossible. To their surprise, Giles recited them one by one. As he spoke, tears welled up in his eyes. At that moment, his numbed soul was finally released. In a daze, he seemed to return to the camp, to the days spent with the POWs. They were no longer just Persian words but real names, scars, and pains. They were not consumed by the flames nor drowned in the tides of history, but remained as indelible pain. Persian Lessons, directed by Vadim Perelman, starring Lars Eidinger and Nahuel Perez Biscayart, released in 2020, is a war drama film. The film is based on true events. It tells us that when lies become salvation, language is the last resistance. The cruelty of the film lies in its exposure of the bare facade of war. In the camp, life was reduced to numbers, and humanity was turned into a tool. Yet, in such an abyss, Giles ignited the spark of humanity with his fictional Persian. Every word he invented was a tribute to the lives of his compatriots. His trembling before the Nazi officer was a battle between the instinct to survive and his conscience. When lies become the only weapon for survival, we see not just cunning but the weak holding on to dignity in desperate situations. In the film, although the officer hadn't personally killed anyone, he was not innocent. Had he paid a little attention to the prisoner list, he would have recognized the Persian words created by Giles. But he never seriously looked at it from start to finish. His silence made him a perpetrator in the war. This is the most shocking aspect of the film's narrative. Giles uses Jewish names to piece together Persian, creating what seems like an absurd lie, but is actually an epic of language against forgetting. Every fictional word is a life erased by the Nazis. Each wooden name of life, every conversation in the Persian language class, leaves a hidden testimony for history. At the end, when Giles fluently recites 2,840 names, it transcends from a survival tool to a judgment against tyranny, proving that truth may be buried but never truly perishes. Giles' argument is the deepest prophecy of humanity. From lies told just to survive to the awakening of willingly facing death, she completes the transformation from a survivor to a guardian of memory. This makes us ponder that the meaning of life may not lie in how long we live, but in how we define ourselves. Existence is like the word life in the film. The desire to survive is important, but only by integrating individual life into a larger memory can we transcend fear and reach spiritual freedom. The film lacks grand war scenes, yet uses fragments of language to reflect the abyss and the starry sky of humanity. It reminds us that in the darkest moments of history, words can be the sharpest weapon. And in times of peace, we must be even more vigilant. When language becomes an accomplice to violence, when memory is selectively forgotten, that is the real concentration camp. Just like in the film's ending scene, where 2,840 names shine like stars, it is our most solemn promise to life. Alright, that's all for today's movie sharing. Please like, comment, and share. Looking forward to our next encounter.
Yeah.